Right, here we are. Welcome to Monday in the Riverina, New South Wales. I'm Tony Bosworth, editor of the West Wyalong Advocate, which is a weekly newspaper in the Riverina region. Now, it's been about 5 days actually since I posted my last video, and there's good reason for that. I've been traveling, yes. So on Thursday, I went off to Narrabri, which is in northwest New South Wales. It's around about 6 hours drive from West Wyalong. West Wyalong itself is about 5 hours drive from Hawkesbury, where my family are, and Narrabri is also about 5 hours, maybe 6 hours from the Hawkesbury as well. So it's kind of a triangle, if you like, if you can envisage that. Hopefully you can. If you don't know what a triangle is by now, you're in big trouble. Anyway, so why did I go to Narrabri and Gunnedah as well, which is 100 kilometres from Narrabri? Well, I went to talk to a publishing company up there. Folks are selling their company, and the new people who are taking over are interesting. They're business people. They're not media people. I actually think that might be an idea. Yeah, because one of the big issues with journalism is this. It's obvious, I suppose, to many people. How do you make money today? How do you do that? It used to be easy, and back in the day it was advertising, right? Because nobody had anywhere else to go and advertise apart from their local papers and also their national papers and magazines as well, which were big. So I've been through all of that, and those heady days of the 1970s, 1980s, even into the 90s, really, when it was all still ticking away and we were all earning good money, and it was, it was a good place to be. It really was. Now, totally different. Everybody's scrabbling around to try and get some income. The model's changed, of course. We know this. People are increasingly going online to get their news. Unwise media companies like Fairfax, as was with the Sydney Morning Herald, gave away all of their news free. I used to buy the paper. I've said this before, but I used to buy the paper every day, Sydney Morning Herald. Then they started putting it online for free. Why would you do that? I don't know. Honestly, sometimes there's a reason, and it's to build your audience. But if you don't have any plan at the end or a business idea at the end, it's bloody useless. Anyway, look, we'll see what happens with the folks up in Narrabri. They have made me an offer, which is good. And look, I'm quite confident about this. I think they're young. They're in their 30s. It's a couple. I reckon they got some good ideas, and I think they're open to good ideas. And I think if there's going to be a funding model that comes out anywhere, it's going to be from the regions. I don't think it's going to be coming from these great big companies like News Corp. I just don't see it. Yeah, they got a lot of money. Still, they got a lot of money, but I don't think they really have a good idea what they're doing. Anyway, it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. One of the things, though, is this, which is the thing about Australia, I suppose. So I set off on Thursday after the paper, the Advocate, was put to bed, and I got off as quick as I could so that I could get there before it gets dark. Now, if you're living in Europe or you're living in the US or many other countries, it probably doesn't bother you too much when it gets dark. You just put your lights on, don't you? But in Australia, you've got to be really, really careful, because at night time, kangaroos come out. You don't want to hit one of these, right? Apart from the fact it will hurt the animal and almost certainly kill it. It's going to damage your car. They could come through your windscreen if you scoop it up. It's not good. Anyway, I was trying to get there and doing a decent amount of speed. I'm doing like 120, 130 kilometers an hour on these roads, total darkness. It's really bad. You're dicing with it. You really are. Anyway, I managed to get there okay. I got there about 8 o'clock in the evening. Went out with my mate Noel, who's a designer, who's also up for a job in this place, and they've offered him a job, which is good. He's a good bloke, he's a real good designer. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Then I went to Gunnedah because they've got another paper there, these folks. They own 2 or 3 papers. And yeah, and then I came back. So what have I done since then? Well, here's a funny thing, and this will pick up my story, okay? My top secret history. So I went to church, as it happens, the Anglican church, St. Barnabas it's called. And I went there because the vicar, and I've told you about this before, He's a bishop. He was a bishop of Canberra. He's been a bishop in Brussels, in Belgium. He's a really good bloke, right? Met his wife as well. She's lovely, lovely. I don't get the Catholic Church where they don't allow people to marry. I'm not really sure what the idea is there. Obviously, there's a religious reason for that, but it's bonkers, right? No wonder they have so many problems with pedophile priests, right? Less likely in the Anglican Church. Anyway, I've talked a little bit about this before. I won't bang on about it. But anyway, I went to church because what he'd organised, the bishop, was a short interview. He does these, right, with people. He's only been in town, crikey, a few weeks, I suppose, 2-3 weeks. Anyway, he's a switched on bloke, right? He's really smart. And so he wanted to do a 5-minute interview. Anyway, I had to sit through the whole service, right? Now, I don't mind. I used to go to church when I was a kid. So this is where it comes back into my top secret history. Remember, I did tell you. Remember, I was singing in the choir. I went to the Royal School of Church Music and then went off on a bus on a slight detour and learned to fire a rifle, which was obviously useful, and meet some people like my friend Jerome. Yeah, so anyway, it was interesting being back there in church, and the service really hasn't changed much. The only thing that changed a lot really is the sermon, because this bloke, this bishop, he's really good, right? He holds your attention. And also what they do now, which is very interesting, I don't know whether it's just him, but they actually print the sermon out so you can kind of read it, right, as you're going along. Now, last time, realistically, I was in church, it was a long time ago. When I was a kid, I was about 10, 11, 12, right? 12 at the top. So I think by the time I was 12 or 13, I was kind of getting out of it because I discovered girls, as you do. It's often what happens, right? But yeah, it's interesting because the sermons back in the day when I was a kid was super boring, right? The Reverend Ireland, he was a nice bloke, right? Never any issues with him at all. What I'm talking about is hands-on. He was never hands-on. He was fine. But he's deceased now, long deceased. And he droned on. He droned on. He wasn't that interesting, right? And also as a kid, I never understood any of his sermons. None of them ever stood out. I don't remember any of them at all. What I do remember, and it's a question that came up in this little interview, which lasted about 5 or 6 minutes, is what's my favourite hymn? And I came up, and it evokes memories in me, even if I mention it, right? In the Bleak Midwinter. It's a wonderful, wonderful hymn, and of course it's from a poem originally, right? And it was put to music. And today, the bishop, he sent me a link to a YouTube video of somebody who was singing it and, recent recording. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. Brought tears to my eyes because I remember when I used to sing it when I was 10 or 11. I've said before, where's that boy gone? Where's he gone? And I used to sing it. And it was near Christmas, right? In the bleak midwinter. And the wind did make moan, and the earth was hard as iron, and water like a stone. And the thing is, that's what it was like, right? In the winter there. So I totally identify with it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of poetry, and it's a beautiful song. It really is. Yeah, anyway. There you go. Okay, let's get back to where we were in my top secret history. So, and this is not in the book, okay? The book Gone, which I wrote for my 2 boys. Tudor and Coulter, their names are. Okay, I'll just tell you a bit about that, actually. Tudor, why do we choose his name? Well, so my family, the Bosworth family, have always lived or had lived many, many, many centuries, seriously, around 2 English villages called Husbands Bosworth and Market Bosworth. When we lived in the Midlands, we lived in Kidworth Beecham, which is about 15 miles away from Market Bosworth, right? It's where the family came from all those many years ago. Although I've told you before, when I did one of these genealogy things, right, they found out I was like 54% Scandinavian. So rape and pillage, folks, rape and pillage. So anyway, that was interesting. So anyway, the other thing about it is, right, so my parents, when I was 16, actually, I've just got to go back a bit. We were still in Kidworth Beecham, but I was going to school in Market Harborough, right? When I was 16, my parents moved. My dad got a job in Caerleon in Wales. So they moved to near Abergavenny, a little village called Gilwern, and bought their first house. This house, 4-bedroom house, right? Decent amount of garden, and it was £5,500. £5,500, right? This would have been 1976, right? Ridiculous. When we eventually, that's my brother and one of my sisters, sold that house back about probably 2-3 years ago. It sold for around about £250,000, right? It's ridiculous, isn't it, really? But anyway, if you go back there till 1976 or so, it was real hard for my parents to buy this house. I mean, they had a mortgage on it. It was still struggling with money quite a bit, although by that time I was almost ready to leave home. Anyway, they moved there, but I couldn't move with them at the time, right? Because I was still doing my O levels and I had to stay to do them. They were in June and they moved. I don't know when they moved. It probably must have been something like April maybe. I was for about 2 months. This is the thing, right? At least 2 months. It was probably 3 or 4 months. I can't remember. I was living with this bloke, Lawrence Coates, right? Now, I didn't really know him that well. He was at school with me, but I didn't really know him that well before. But his mother, my dad knew his mother, is the thing. So his mother, she used to go to Yugoslavia every year for a holiday. Now, Yugoslavia at that time was run by Tito, right? And it was a communist country. She used to go there every summer. We'll get back onto that at some stage. Anyway, Lawrence, right? Red-haired bloke. I'll tell you who he's like. He's like that bloke in Simply Red, right? He's like the bloke in there. Looks like him. It could even be him, actually. And I've tried finding out what happened to him, and I can't really get anywhere with it, right? Which is surprising and a bit disappointing. He was a really interesting kid. I don't know what happened with his dad. I don't know where his dad was, but he was, his single parent. His mum was bringing him up, right? And she was a no-nonsense kind of a person. But anyway, he was really allowed to do a lot of what he wanted to do. I mean, because I was smoking then, as you know, so we were going out smoking. And also what we do, it's beautiful, really, in many ways. Like Friday nights, right? Bear in mind, I was supposed to be learning studying for my O levels, and frankly, I never did any bloody studying. I really didn't. It's the same for A levels. We'll get onto that in a while. But anyway, I didn't really do anything because we were always going out, right? So Lawrence Coates, this is a great thing about, right? So what he wanted, he would have been 15, 16. He was going out with this black woman, right? And I say woman, it's true. She was about 21 or 22. Can you believe this? A beautiful, beautiful woman. And she worked at the local old people's home, which was quite a way away, right? And of course, none of us could drive at that stage. We were too young to be driving a car. So we used to walk up there. I remember it so clearly, in the summer. It was beautiful, right? In the country there. And we used to walk up there and he'd spend a night with her. And then I'd walk back and the other friends, several of us, 2 or 3 or 4 of us. And on Friday nights, which is really great, and I'll always treasure this, we used to sit around at home, at Lawrence Coates' home. It was on the same estate as my parents' home had been, right? And, they'd sold their house. And no, they hadn't sold their house. What am I talking about? Yes, they had. That's nonsense. Of course, they had a house in Kibworth Beecham. They'd sold that, sorry. And then they bought the house in Wales, near Abergavenny. Anyway, minor detail. But point was, Friday nights, right? Every Friday night, I think it was about 10:30 at night, Hammer House of Horror, right? Oh, I'll never forget it. We used to watch it every Friday night, and we used to sit there and we'd be having drinks and smoking cigarettes and all that. And it'd always be somebody, one of the group. He would knock on the window round about 11:30, right? And we'd be scared shitless, right? We'd be really scared, and we'd wonder who it was. And then Lawrence would get up and pull the curtain back, and there'd be one of our mates, just sort of looking inside. It was a good time. And, the thing I was a bit of an outsider because they already had their friends, they were already a group of friends, and I didn't know them, but they just accepted me and they embraced me. And it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It was a time of complete freedom, The other thing is we all joined the Labour Party Young Socialists, right? And that was interesting as well because there was an election coming up. I can't even remember which election it was, but there was this bloke, I can't remember his name, but he was a university lecturer, right? He's married, and he sort of kind of adopted the group of us, right? We all joined. We were all 14, 15, 16, we were not sort of experienced in life or anything like that. Anyway, he used to take us out. We used to have this big loudspeaker on the car, right? And Lawrence is always really funny. So we'd be following a bloke on a motorbike, for example, and he'd be going, Kev, on this loudspeaker, because Kev would have his name on the back of the helmet, right? So he'd be going, Kev, we'd be right following close behind him in this Triumph 2000 and 2500. This lecturer bloke would be driving, and he'd be going, Kev, vote Labour, you'll be able to get a car. And then one day we were doing this, and he saw this three-wheeler car, Reliant Robin, right? It was ridiculous. I'll tell you something about it as a journalist, motoring journalist, a Reliant Robin, 3 wheels. It's impossible to avoid potholes in the road, right? One of those wheels is going to get it, right? You just can't avoid it, Anyway, we were following this Reliant Robin one evening, and he was going, hey, mate, you in the Robin. Under a Labour government, you could afford that 4th wheel. It's ridiculous, it really was. Oh, my God. Anyway, it was fun, it was bloody fun. It really was. So I did that, and I did my O-levels. I did all right. I didn't do badly, apart from maths. I had this maths teacher, Mrs. Thom, Thom. She always said to me, Bosworth, if you don't get your maths CSE, which was below an O-level, right? It was the simplest form of maths exam ever, but I could never pass it, right? She said, if you don't get this, you'll never become a journalist. How she worked that out, I don't know. I still keep thinking I want to go and knock on her door and see her and say, listen, I actually did make it as a journalist. I mean, it's probably pointless now. She may not even be alive for all I know, but she was super annoying, right? Maths is not of interest to me whatsoever. I've managed to get through life perfectly happily, thanks very much, without being able to add up. I can't do maths. I just don't have the brain for it. I really, really don't. Once, right, I was doing one of my friends. He said, look, I'm writing this book, a motoring book. He said, I'd like you to do something on it. He said, we're going to give you X amount per word. And I can't remember what it was, but I said to my girlfriend, now my wife, I said, hey, this is brilliant. I'm going to make about £20,000. She said, no, you're not. She thought about it for about 2 seconds. She said, you make about £2,000 tops. Okay. I just couldn't work it out properly. Anyway, so don't ever rely on me for anything like that. If you need a ransom note writing, I can do it, right? I can write anything, I always like that Russell Crowe quote, supposedly, about Gladiator, when there was a line in it where he had to go on about, I am the gladiator, I'm whatever his name was, I'm Romulus Remus the gladiator, I've come to blah, blah. Anyway, apparently, when he was given this line, he said, this is rubbish, this is shit, this is such a... I shouldn't swear, I don't want to swear. This is rubbish. But I am Russell Crowe, I am the world's best actor. I will turn this into something gold, which he did, right? Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, writing, don't have a problem. This is a mistake they make where I am now. They go, oh, you don't know anything about sport. Doesn't matter. If you give me the basics, I can write a story and it will be totally spot on. Anyway, so that's what I was doing. And there I was with Lawrence Coates and his mates and having a super good time. I'll finish in a minute because the thing is this. So then I had to go to Wales. I was 16 still, right? I had to go to Wales. And it was so bad. It was so bad because I had started really fancying girls. In fact, I'll tell you, Rachel Brown, she'll be embarrassed if she hears this, but one of her friends, Karen Brown, no relation, she came up to me. I remember this so clearly like it was yesterday, up in music room. And Rachel, she was playing the piano, as we were waiting for the teacher to come in. And at that stage, I was always an amusing kid, right? That's what I had, that's what I had. I could make people laugh. And I suppose I was a bit foolish, and it reminds me of one of my son tutors. I didn't go on about that story, did I? I never told you about their names, did I? About tutors teacher, and he said to me one day, because he's messing about a lot, he said, look, you got to try and rein him in. He said he thinks he's a lot funnier than he is. I was probably like that too. But thing is, so Karen Brown comes up to me and she goes, will you go out with Rachel? Now, Rachel was super, super attractive, right? Super attractive. And I said, no. Why would I do that? I didn't say it like that. I said it like amusingly. Hey, why would I do that? You know? And I've always regretted it, right? I just said it because I had no confidence. I should have just said, yeah, absolutely. And then hopefully I would have done. But to be honest with you, even if I had said that, I wouldn't have known what to do. I didn't know what to do when I was 16, right? Most people probably do now. Now, they probably go do an intensive course of Pornhub or something. But I didn't have any ideas. Very sad. And anyway, I can talk a bit about, well, no, I won't talk a bit more about it later. Let's do it now. So I did become good friends with her. And that's been a thing about through my life, really, becoming friends with women. But often then I get to the stage where I really do fancy them, but I've not been able to close it, as they say, right? Anyway, slightly better now. Actually, it's nonsense. It's the same now as it's always been. I don't really worry about it now, of course. But anyway, so there we were. But it was sad going to Wales. I was it was very bad. I think if you've got kids and you're going to move and you're going to do it when they're 16, my advice would be do not do it, because I was just forming relationships with people and getting on well with people. I love living in Market Harbour, Kidworth Beecham area. I knew it. It's a beautiful part of the country, really, in Britain. And then to move to Wales, it was a real shock to my system. And I had to do 2 years of school in Wales. And I'll talk a bit more about that next time we talk, because time's running out a bit now. Anyway, look, there you go. Look, please subscribe, right? I've still got 81 subscribers. It's pitiful, right? So just click the subscribe button, please. I'm saying this, nobody's watching it. But anyway, all good. So look, take care out there, folks, whether it's morning, evening, or afternoon in your neck of the woods, and we'll talk again soon. Take care, and yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.